bases dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here, September 4th. It's a Wednesday. It's during the international break, so sometimes these shows go sideways and backwards and spin around and pirouette upon themselves. That's what we're doing. And with it being a Wall Pass Wednesday, you can have a big hand in making all of that happen. Send in your questions on Twitter at Soccer Down here. Let us know what you're thinking about the question that is on the table as of right now. Who are your most underrated players in Major League Soccer? And if you want to take it from a historical perspective, go for it. If you want to take it currently, go for it. Who are your most underrated players who don't get enough love in Major League Soccer? We'll talk about that. Any other questions that you guys bring to the table? Alongside some news, John, that we got to get into to start the show. Lots of different things have happened over the last couple of days. We didn't have a live show yesterday because I went up to the Gresselmania Golf Classic up at TPC Sugarloaf, and I got to give a ton of credit to Julian Gressel and his folks because they raised over $90,000 for Soccer in the Streets and the Station Soccer Project. And kind of the idea behind it was for this event, this involvement from Julian to help fund one of the next Station Soccer pitches over the next year. And that type of dollar figure will put you pretty much there. So, we've seen the fields at 5 Point Station. We've seen the fields at West End. There's one being constructed just across the street from the East Point MARTA station. And there are a couple others that are in various stages of development. One of those will be brought to fruition because of an event like this and because of the involvement of Julian Gressel. And it's very cool to see athletes get so involved in giving back to their community.
Yeah, and the fact that you're seeing it spread out, in different parts of the city. It's not just linked to one particular area. And the fact that you're sharing the sport with parts of the city that for one reason or another may not have either the access or whatever you want to phrase it as, the idea that it can be right there in front of you. The idea that, we can just go down the street or we can go to the MARTA station and we can participate in a sport that we really like. And in turn, what we can do is we can share our knowledge, share our love, share our appreciation for the sport in and of itself. And to be able to have that tangible element instead of sitting there saying, well, I wish I had one of these near me. You're getting to the point now where a lot of folks are having one of these near me. And the golf tournament is that centerpiece or one of the centerpieces that really can accelerate having a bunch of these different places near me. And to be able to reach out, touch it, have that tangible element where you can sit there and say, yeah, I went to place X yesterday. I went to East Point yesterday. I went downtown yesterday. And attaching that to another person, having that person become interested. And it's that rubbing off and that multiplication that you can have through events like yesterday. And just the fact that it's being spread out the way that it is, to me, is another cool element of all of this. And it's not just linked to one place and making that one place larger. It's about reaching out and having it in a bunch of different places so you can spread the word that way.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole Station Soccer Project. That's the idea behind it. But what's impressive is when people grab onto that idea and help make it happen, because that's what Julian Gressel did. I mean, this golf tournament wasn't something that Soccer in the Streets does. It wasn't something that they've done on a regular basis. We organized a golf tournament when I was there probably 12, 13 years ago, and that was the last time there was a golf tournament attached to it. So this was Julian, and I want to make it clear that this is a professional athlete who didn't grow up in Atlanta. This is a guy who came here in 2017. He's been here for, almost 3 years now, and put his time and energy and his people and his power as a celebrity in town to raising money for an organization to make something happen. That's very cool to see, and it doesn't happen everywhere, and it's awesome to see Julian get that involved and just down to details. I mean, he was very, very involved in this event and bringing sponsors to the table and bringing partners to the table. So there will be a station soccer field that will be built, and it will primarily be built because of Julian Gressel, and it's very cool. And a lot of players came out and supported Julian and his efforts in this, and Michael Parkhurst talked about that. It was, when other guys on the team see that, hey, this guy's going kind of a step beyond to do things, we want to support him in doing that, and that's why guys turned out. That's why Parkhurst turned out, even though he wasn't taking full swings. He said his shoulder was bothering him, so he was just chipping and putting. Breck Shea came out with his putter. I think that was the only club he brought. That was probably all he needed to bring with his knee recovery going on. So very cool to see so many guys out there, and 92.9 broadcasted from TPC Sugarloaf all day, and I'm really thankful that they saw fit to put the resources to doing that as well. So it was an awesome day, an awesome project, and just an awesome job by Julian Gressel to make that happen. So all the kudos that you can give him, he deserves them. More on the Atlanta United front, Brandon Vasquez called into the US U23 camp. A little bit of a surprise. The U23 thing has been maybe under the radar so far, and Jason Christ brought in 26 players. They're going to play Japan in a friendly. Most of the players are coming from MLS. Vasquez was added late, along with a goalkeeper, Drake Callender from the University of California. Competing with Vasquez at forward for time, you've got a lot of different players. Haji Wright came over from VVV Venlo. Sebastian Soto, Hanover 96, who was in the process of possibly moving from Hanover, didn't happen. Bofo Salcedo and Brooks Lennon from Real Salt Lake, Jesus Ferreira from FC Dallas, Mason Toy from Minnesota United. It's a good opportunity for Brandon to mix in with players, around his age and kind of see where he stands. And for me, 2019 has been a big question of that for him because we didn't really know. 2018, injuries, he just kind of struggled to get going at different points in the year after a really promising 2017. 2019 started the same way as 2018 ended until he got healthy and until he had his Open Cup run and scored 4 goals and was a massive part of Atlanta United winning that trophy. Now, it's been a little harder to get time with the first team. He has looked good for Atlanta United too, but this is a big opportunity for him. I think where he is in his career, he needs these chances to step out and stand out on his own. And he's going to be tested trying to compete for time in that Japan friendly with Soto, with Toy, with Wright, with Ferreira, with guys who are getting more minutes than him at the moment.
Yeah, and when you were saying literally what you were saying, it was what was going through my head, that you can take advantage of these opportunities. And for him to get these, this is definitely something, obviously it's a feather in your cap, but I know that a lot of folks would like to see Brandon be able to do more, regardless of where it is, whether it's with Atlanta United too, whether it's with Atlanta United. Now he's being able to do it on the national stage, now the international stage. And to be able to have something like this that you can put on your resume, okay, you're a part of it, now what do you do with it? And you want to see him flourish, you want to see him get reps, you want to see him in that competition, and you want to see how he performs, whether it's on the practice pitch, whether it's in the matches themselves. And I think that this is a prime opportunity for everybody pretty much to see what Brandon can do, including Brandon. And I think that the fact that he is on this stage, I think it's a cool thing to see. But now what do you do with this opportunity now that you are healthy, now that you have the expectation in your own head of, okay, I want to be able to do X, Y, and Z. Well, this is an opportunity to show what you can do out there now that you are healthy. What do you do with it? And that's going to be the fun part for those of us watching to see how Brandon takes advantage of this opportunity.
It's also a fun thing that Bienveni Kanakimana of Atlanta United 2 is starting for Burundi in a World Cup qualifier going on right now. And you can actually watch that on YouTube. I didn't know this was a thing. I don't know if it had been announced prior, but FIFA TV and YouTube have partnered to broadcast a number of these African World Cup qualifiers over 2 legs, and Burundi and Tanzania is one of them at the moment. And they're in the 7th minute, and Kana Kamana is starting for the Swallows of Burundi. That's kind of cool.
Just dial it up. So I'm staring at it as we go, and looks like a gorgeous day to play. And so without sound, I'll be keeping an eye on what's going on with Burundi and Tanzania.
Yamil Assad appears to be returning to the United States. He will be signing a contract with DC United for the 2020 season. Going to play in USL with Loudoun United for the rest of 29, it sounds like. This whole thing has been just incredibly bizarre and a wasted calendar year for Yamil Assad, and I have no idea why that's the case. I don't know if it's salary demands. I don't know if it's transfer fee demands from Vélez Sarsfield before they let him go. I don't know if it's the agent. I have no idea, but to come off of the 2017 and 2018 that he had in MLS and then basically not play in 2019, 18 minutes or so with Vélez Sarsfield, barely made the 18, and now he'll get a few games in the USL Championship. I have no idea. No clue. Nope. And it's just craziness to me. It's crazy that they couldn't find a transfer fee that made sense as Assad was going into the last 6 months of his contract. It's crazy that DC wasn't willing to figure this out. They had the roster spots. They had the money to do it. It sounds like they were very close. It's even more crazy to me that they couldn't get it done when he was let go from Vélez Sarsfield after they'd already been chasing him, and get him back into some fitness to where he might be able to contribute to you this season. Now the roster freeze is done. You couldn't do it if you wanted to. There's so many questions on so many fronts, but according to Stephen Goff of the Washington Post, Yamil Assad will be a part of DC United's roster for 2020.
Yeah. And the bizarre is probably the best word that I could think of when it comes to this whole thing. I mean, how many minutes has he played in the last? Is it as many minutes as it is months that he's been away?
No, it's more minutes.
Like 8. Okay, but it's just crazy, and you sit there and you scratch your head. You're going, okay, what's going on, and all of these different parts that might have contributed to the whole thing. And I mean, I don't mean to necessarily laugh at what's going on, but you just get to this point to where you're going, what's going on here? And it honestly that has been one of the bigger head scratchers. And with all of the other issues that DC United's having to deal with on their roster that are coming up quicker than a lot of folks are going to think. I mean, okay, so this could have been done a lot sooner. And now Yamil gets match fit with Loudoun United. And that's going to be fun to keep an eye on the USL Championship with his time at Loudoun for the remainder of the year to see how his body responds and how he gets back into playing shape. But it's wild what has been going on for the last year plus.
New England Revolution announced yesterday or actually a couple days ago, that they are launching a residency program in their academy, and it's the first time that they've done that. According to the release over at their website, the Revolution will have players living full-time in a local residence that was recently acquired by the club. Players will be living full-time under the supervision of academy staff. This new program will see players from New England and other parts of the country benefit from the club's fully funded academy program by providing them with a living space in close proximity to Gillette Stadium. They had 7 players last season get call-ups to youth national team camps and squads. Plenty of them trained with the first team during the year. 2 signed homegrown contracts. The Revolution Academy has not been as strong as some of the other MLS academies, but putting the flat-out money into a residency program is a big commitment, and that's a step in the right direction for New England. Now, that doesn't make your training better. That doesn't make your squads more competitive. That doesn't make any of that happen. But it gives you a wider reach, and you can start to bring in players. And it sounds like this is for a couple different things. I mean, the Revolution have a fairly good-sized territory to pull from in the current system. But also, I think it's kind of obvious that very soon you're going to get rid of these territories or expand them or have opportunities to bring kids in from outside the territory in larger numbers, and having a residency program will allow that to happen for you.
Yeah. And when you're going to, now that you're seeing Bob Kraft on campus helping to break ground on things and see the investment that he's making in and around. Is it still Gillette Stadium, or is it something different? I just call it Foxborough.
It's Gillette.
Okay. So when you see everything that he's doing with the Revolution there in and around Gillette now. He's making appearances on campus. You're seeing all of this kind of stuff that's going on. And for him to see what the Revolution can be as an MLS franchise and making all of these investments into it, that the residency thing for me, and now that you're seeing the Revolution do this, you're now looking at the other teams that are serious about doing these kinds of things, and how do they respond, and where do they continue to act, where the Revolution have done this. Okay, so they've done this, we need to do this in response and kind of keep up with what we're seeing. So good step for the Revs, and for me, it's another good thing that they're investing the way that they are and getting back to where they were as an MLS franchise. Looking forward to seeing what they do with this going forward. All right, so you're building the facilities, and now you want to bring in the players to help move things along too.
The U.S. women won last night 3-0 over Portugal in St. Paul, Minnesota. Carly Lloyd had 2 of those goals. That win has Jill Ellis level with Tony DeCicco for the most wins in U.S. women's national team history. Kind of cool that happens at the end of Ellis's run, and she absolutely deserves it. DeCicco was one of the powerhouses in kind of that middle run for the women's national team in their history, and won them a World Cup, and had just left such a huge legacy on women's soccer in the United States beyond just that one World Cup win. Anson Dorrance kind of got things started. He's still involved at the University of North Carolina, winning things with them. But he won the first World Cup. It was DeCicco won the next one, and it's Ellis who's won the last 2. Those are the Mount Rushmore of women's soccer coaches in the United States. And the question is kind of who's going to be next after Ellis. And we talked about it on Soccer Over There Monday as the Daily Mirror dropped it out there. Phil Neville was a candidate. That was debunked rather quickly. And What it sounds like is it was an agent's ploy of, yeah, Phil Neville's very popular these days. You might need to give him more money to keep him here. That's what it seems like. Neville said he was flattered by the association, and by all accounts on the U.S. side, he was not a serious candidate. So who knows? It's fun to see these games get played, but Ellis had already stamped her place in history. Now she's tied with DeCicco in the record book. She'll have that record before she's done. And the questions still remain, what's going to be next? Now that Kate Markgraf is in place as the general manager, what direction is she going to go? There's, not really a whole lot of progress there just yet, and somewhat understandable. You want to get this celebration tour out of the way, but I think we're going to have to start hearing about interviews, short lists, things like that coming out officially, because you don't want this to linger too long. If there's NWSL candidates, you could be waiting till the end of that. And it sounds like most of the candidates are going to come out of the NWSL.
Yeah, and obviously with Paul Riley removing his name from the run, news on Lynn Hamilton yesterday as well. good for her with being able to, after this season is over, head down to the Southern Hemisphere to continue her playing.
Lynn Williams, and that's not
Lynn Williams,
done.
thank you.
That's rumored at this point. So,
okay.
Yeah, hold off on that. That's not a done deal yet. You're going to start hearing about those things. One, the Australian League schedules specifically counter to NWSL to have that situation happen where players play in both. So that's not the same thing as one of the European teams coming in and wanting to bring players in on a full-time. So that's a different conversation altogether. But Paul Riley has said he's not interested. Don't know if he was honestly even really part of that discussion because his name wasn't brought up in the initial grouping of names that were starting to make the rounds. It sounds like they're primarily going to look at Laura Harvey, who has done really well with Utah previously with Reign FC. Could be looking at Mark Krikorian, who is at Florida State and has done extremely well there. I'm really curious to see if Reign FC's current manager, Vlatko Andonovski, seems to be the one who's getting the most attention, and I think probably more importantly, according to a lot of the people who follow the team closely, seems to be the one that the players are kind of pushing for, or at least giving very positive feedback about.
Yeah. And do you want to go from the professional route or do you want to go college? And that's the, with you mentioning the college names from the NCAA D1 level and the continuity that you would have with an NWSL coach in there, being familiar with the players that are a part of the national landscape. And that's really the way that I'm looking at it. You look at one or the other, and is a coach who has a tremendous pedigree from the NCAA ranks, is that going to be a direction you want to go? Or with everybody that's been playing, do you stick with the professional thing? So I think that's what I'm going to be looking at, and looking at this as the process goes forward. Do you go with the college guy with the pedigree, or do you go with the professional coach who's been in and around a lot of the players who've been in the national team?
You got to start going with the professional coach. I'm sorry, there's a big difference, and I would like to think that the women's game has outgrown a college coach stepping in. Ellis came out of the college game. Others have come out of the college game. I would hope that the professional game has hit the level where it's a no-brainer. I think it has, and I think Andonovski is the person if that's the direction that the players want to go in. And I think the players are going to have a huge say in this. That'll be one of the fascinating things about it with Mark Graff involved, is coming from the players' side, understanding what they deal with. She's been very vocal, in her time at ESPN about her opinions and how she wants things to be. So now she gets a chance to make it happen. I think the players are going to be involved in that process as well. Let's take a break. Let's come back. We'll get into more news as we go, but we're going to hit the Twitter timeline with some of your most underrated players in MLS, but also any other questions you might have on a Wednesday. We'll be right back after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Apple Linsky & Associates. personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, September 4th edition. It's a well past Wednesday, so we take your questions. We also sometimes throw questions at you. And the question today was most underrated players in MLS. I see some have taken it from a historical perspective. Others will get into it from the current side. You can also ask your own questions, and that's what we'll be taking a lot of today. What's on the list for right now, John?
Okay, well, Abby Schiffman took one of mine. Darlington Nagbe, I feel, is one of the most underrated players.
He is. He definitely is, and I think he's starting to get a lot of attention, which is a good thing. But it's been a weird thing with him. It feels like with Darlington, he'll get no attention and just not be talked about, and then he'll have a big performance, and then he will get a ton of attention and maybe gets sometimes talked about in ways I think that are unfair because people look at him and like, oh, he's super talented. He should be scoring 10 goals and have 10 assists a season. And it's not his game. So he's in this really weird spot, and he's just a very unique player. I don't know if we've ever really had a player like him with the United States and in MLS that does the things that he does at such a high level, and I think also plays to his strengths so well. You don't see him trying to do too much. You don't see him making mistakes of trying to be something that he's not. He knows exactly who he is as a player, and I think he found the perfect spot here in Atlanta. He was very good with Portland. I think he's been even better in his, almost 2 years here in Atlanta.
Daniel Price, most underrated player in MLS with a question mark. I don't know if he is the most, but he's up there. I think Jeff Larenowitz. I feel like throughout his entire career, he deserves more recognition. The fact he only has 4 caps with the USMNT baffles me. # Wild Pass Wednesday.
He's another one that I think when you look at Jeff's run, and this would be more of a historical thing about where Jeff fits in terms of being underrated. Now I think it's a different conversation than what it was, let's say, 5 years into his career, as he was finishing up with New England, going to Colorado, winning an MLS Cup. He got his 4 caps with the U.S. 2011 and 2012. You're talking about a time frame where you had Michael Bradley starting to emerge, and he was playing in Europe at a very high level and playing the best soccer of his life. You had Maurice Edu, who was playing in Scotland and an outstanding player in that role. You had a lot of players who played those positions and made it difficult, I think, for Larenowitz to find that time. Ricardo Clark was another one who was part of that 2010 World Cup team. I think some of it with Jeff is just a little bit of bad luck because he was emerging at a time when there was a ton of competition for those specific roles. I look at the 2010 World Cup team and players in that position. You had Bradley, Stuart Holden played a little more of an advanced role, but he could drop in and play as an 8. Ricardo Clark. You had Jose Francisco Torres, who is another really good player who's underrated. Maurice Edu, Benny Feilhaber. You had Sasha Klestjen starting to emerge around that time as well, who played in a deeper role when he was at Anderlecht in Belgium. You had a number of players who played the same position that were all really, really good. I don't think it's a situation where Jeff was, overlooked. It's just he was at a time where there was intense competition at the same position. It happens sometimes. We've seen it with forwards before where, if you were a top forward in an MLS around the time that Brian McBride was the guy, you weren't getting much time with the national team. And you look at a player like Jeff Cunningham, who scored just a boatload of goals in Major League Soccer. But he didn't fit the style, he didn't fit the need at the forward position, and he wasn't Brian McBride. So sometimes that happens, goalkeepers especially. You look at a goalkeeper like Marcus Hahnemann, who was an outstanding goalkeeper and hung around as a backup for a number of cycles. But Hahnemann, kind of hit that time where he overlapped Keller and Friedel and also the emergence of Tim Howard. So there just wasn't a time for Marcus Hahnemann. And you kind of feel like maybe Brad Gazan is going to fall into that sort of role where he was the number 2 to Howard, who is going to go down as one of the best goalkeepers the U.S. has ever had. But then when Howard starts to go, you have Zach Steffen emerging. And that's just how it goes sometimes. That's how careers go sometimes. I think Jeff is in that type of situation where he was very, very, very good, but there just happened to be better players in that position when he was in his prime.
Some folks are going down the Brad Gazan route as well, and that has sparked an internal conversation, but I'll go to the head of the line here from Vine City FC. I think Brad Gazan may get a start in a USMNT friendly. As many have noted, Brad's distribution's really improved. Berhalter might use him to show what he wants in that department. Curious, are there stats to capture keepers' work with their feet? Hashtag Well Past Wednesday.
Oh, yeah. No, there definitely are. I don't have them on Zach Steffen now that he's in Germany, but when you look at MLS and you look at the stats on distribution, and for me, when I'm looking at it, especially when it comes to Atlanta United, I'm looking at completion of long passes. Short passes is one thing, and that's... For a goalkeeper, it's kind of a given that you're going to be doing that. It's the longer passes that I'm looking at, and how well do they connect on those. Brad is among the best, and I'm pulling up the numbers right now as we speak. So when you get into the regulars in the league and you want to look at their distribution, let me actually get the regulars in there and not the guys who have played 1 or 2 games. All right, as I break out the database, in terms of just straight up number of passes in a match, Brad's completing 30.7 per game. That puts him 6th in the league. So middle of the top half in terms of just being involved. But then you take the next step, accurate long passes. Brad is number 3. And he completes half of them, which is a good percentage. Nick Raimondo completes 9.5. Brad completes 8.6. Both complete them at about a 50% clip. David Bingham completes a couple more long passes, 8.8 per game, but he also has over 10 that are not completed. Tim Howard, same thing, 7.9 completed per game, 13.1 that are inaccurate. So Brad and Nick Raimondo, in my mind, are the 2 best because they're very involved in the passing game for a team. They complete long passes at a higher volume than most goalkeepers in the league, and they are the 2 that complete them at a 50% clip or better. That's why I put him in that classification as one of the best in terms of distribution. it's something that Zach Steffen struggles with, and I think it's something that Greg Berhalter is going to have to make some decisions, because Steffen is a great shot stopper. Steffen can make spectacular things happen. I think Brad doesn't get enough credit in that regard, but Brad, you don't see with Atlanta especially, be called upon to make spectacular things happen as often because his team doesn't give up as many shots. But he's made big saves at big moments when he's had to. Steffen's just had to do more of that, and that's why I think he's got the headlines at the moment. I think Brad Gazan could absolutely step in and start with the national team right now, and I do think he would help the team in their possession and their build-up play more than they're getting out of Zach Steffen at the moment.
I've got two who currently play that I would have on a list, and one historic. Raimondo was one of my two, but mainly because of location.
In the league, I don't think he's underrated. In the national team conversation, he is, and he's another one that it's just bad timing in his career because you had guys that were ahead of him. I think the biggest thing when it comes to Nick Raimondo is his height, and there are still people out there who say that a goalkeeper has to be 6'3" and has to be tall, and if they're not, they can't play goalkeeper. Well, that's stupid, and Nick Raimondo has shown that. Nick Raimondo, I think, in the league is very highly rated, and maybe in the last couple of years he's been a little underrated. But I think nationally, league-wise, he's pretty well respected. It's just that national team part that's been missing for him, but Tim Howard's been better.
The other guy that I had on my list as looked at as being underrated mainly because of location was Safir Taider out of Montreal.
Yeah, he's definitely one. He doesn't get talked about enough. Taider, I think if Montreal had a little bit better team, he'd probably get more respect. But Taider's a player who can do the job for you defensively as a number 8, but he can get forward and score goals and create goals. I really like Safir Taider's game. He's one of my favorite players in the league. And he's a guy who just, kind of goes about his business, doesn't get the headlines much, doesn't get talked about at MLSsoccer.com much. But he's a player that if you're talking about guys to build around in the league, he would be on my list. He wouldn't be my first pick, but he'd probably be my second or third.
Scoring update, scoreless in the 34th, Burundi and Tanzania. My historical guy was Steve Cherundolo.
I don't know if he's underrated, honestly. Cherundolo is possibly the best right back in U.S. men's national team history. And I don't know many people that would argue it too hard. So it's an interesting conversation when you talk about underrated in the U.S. soccer world, because in the U.S. soccer world, I don't think Cherundolo is all that underrated, but he's not Clint Dempsey. He's not, Josie Altidore, who scored a bunch of goals. He's not Landon Donovan. He's not the goalkeeper who gets a lot of attention. He flies under the radar with the mainstream, maybe, but in the soccer world, I don't think he's necessarily underrated. Cherundolo was such a vital part of that 2010 era, and I think if there's anything about him being underrated from a U.S. perspective, it's just because he wasn't an MLS guy. He didn't play here, so you didn't see him quite as much. Spent his career in Germany. And, wasn't with like a Bayern, at that point. And the Bundesliga, I don't think was quite as just well known in the U.S. at that stage either. So if you want to call him underrated because he's not known quite as much from that regard, I could go there. But in terms of where people rate him, and especially I think people who know, he's not underrated. He's in a really unique spot in that way because of just how the conversation goes at times in our country with soccer. But people who I look to rate players, I don't think Cherundolo gets underrated very much. Like Safir Taider, I think, is a prime example of what I'm looking for anyway when I talk about underrated. A top player in this league who in this league's ecosystem and the hive mind of Major League Soccer conversation and analysis, he's a name who doesn't get brought up enough. He just doesn't get talked about enough, and I think he should. I think another one who's starting to fall into that is Kasper Shabilko.
Yeah.
Shabilko's outstanding with Philadelphia. Absolutely outstanding. And he's not talked about as one of the best goal scorers in this league. He should be. It's just a steal for the Union to get him last season when he was out of contract, and to see him up close this weekend and what he can do, his movement off the ball, his quality, he is an outstanding player. And he's a guy that I think will not be underrated for long, because I think Philadelphia is not going to be as underrated for long as a club, and he's going to be a big part of that. We'll get into more of your questions, more of your comments, more of your most underrated players in MLS, whether it's current or historical. You pick. We'll get into more of that right after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here. Final segment, hour number 1, as we get ready for Atlanta United 2 tonight. Birmingham Legion coming to town, Fifth Third Bank Stadium in Kennesaw. The Legion have not lost in a little while, John. It's not going to be an easy one for the Twos tonight.
No, and they, like a lot of teams that we've seen in USL, whether it's Championship or League One, there are examples of teams who've been first-year teams, go at it from a veteran perspective, and it takes a little while for them to get to full song. And you're seeing a different Birmingham team now than you did at the beginning of the year as they were trying to get things sorted out. Tom Sohn picked up Coach of the Month honors for what Birmingham has been able to do. And it's going to be a tough test for Atlanta United 2 tonight. And I want to see the last couple of matches have been kind of crazy for Birmingham. The Bethlehem match comes to mind, where you had multiple red cards on both sides. And then it was a fight against Loudoun the other day. So, looking forward to seeing what Birmingham brings to the table. And it's big for them as they try to stay north of the playoff bar, and Atlanta United 2 tries to go spoiler at home.
Yeah, they've got a nice little cushion, I think, in the playoff conversation, but I think their ambitions are not just staying above the line. I think they're to get higher up the table, and they have that possibility as it started to round into form. They went with a lot of players that were known quantities. and not just veterans, but guys that were known quantities to Jay Heaps and Tom Sohn.
Yep.
That's what stood out to me, is so many players that had connections to the Revolution and those two, whether they were drafted, whether they spent some time with the Revs, whether they're on loan from the Revs, just guys that are well known. And that has a big factor in it. Then it's a lot easier. You have a base to start from. And it's worked eventually for Birmingham. I think they've also made some smart pickups with Anderson Asayadu, who didn't fit here in Atlanta. He's moved over to Birmingham. Akeem Ward, who was with DC United, played for them earlier this season, played mostly for Loudoun United. They had to let him go. Birmingham snatched him up. So should be an interesting one tonight with a very young Atlanta team against a very veteran-laden, or at least somewhat experienced Birmingham Legion team. It's not really an older team, but they've got guys with more high-level experience. That's going to be at 7:30 up in Kennesaw. If you can't join us in person, you can watch on ESPN+. Question on the table is underrated, and who are the most underrated players in MLS? I'll give you a couple this season that I feel like don't get enough love around the league. Edward Atuesta from LAFC.
Yeah.
He's been the biggest difference for LAFC this season. I think last year where they played Mark Anthony Kaye as the 6, they were good. With Atuesta playing in that role and Kaye in more of an 8 role, they're better, and they are what they are this season. Jan Gregush in Minnesota, one of the best signings this season for sure. You'll notice that I'm picking a lot of 6s and 8s because I feel like those are positions that just don't get talked about enough, and they're not rated as highly as they should be. Here's one that's not in those roles, a playmaker who we've talked about a good bit, but I don't feel like he's getting a lot of love around the league. Carlos Heel.
Yeah.
Carlos Heel's been outstanding for the Revolution. He was really good for them in the Brad Friedel era of the Revolution. He's been even better with Bruce Arena. I think maybe the most underrated player this season, because nobody is talking about him, Ryan Hollingshead. Ryan Hollingshead for FC Dallas, utility guy, but he's played a lot as a left back this season. He can play in the midfield. He can give you time as a central midfielder. He can play up higher if you're playing a 4-3-3. He's got 6 goals this season. He is doing the job defensively, getting stuck into tackles, recovering balls, but he's also creating chances the other way. He's good on the dribble. He's getting shots every game. He's creating some chances. He's a good passer. He doesn't turn the ball over easily. Just a very well-rounded player and a hard worker who, when you think about FC Dallas, you're thinking about the young kids. You're thinking about Paxton Pomykal. You're thinking about Jesus Ferreira starting to get goals. Now you've got the Cobra, Andrasic starting to get goals. You got Michael Barrios and his speed. Ryan Hollingshead could be one of the most important pieces for that team. And if you don't have him, I don't know if you're doing what they're doing.
So then, by comparison, since you're on the FC Dallas roster, what about a guy like Reto Ziegler?
Well, he gets talked about more than Hollingshead. And, FC Dallas as a whole doesn't get talked about enough. And some of that's just down to the market itself. But, Ziegler is a player who I think he gets more pub than Hollingshead. Hollingshead, for me, could be in the national team conversation. And it seems like whenever you bring that up, people just laugh. They shouldn't. He's been that good. He's flat out been that good this season. Ziegler, I think, is a little more of a known quantity when it comes to Dallas. There's not much known nationally about Dallas, period. They're just not talked about very much. And I think if you ask fans around the league, they would probably give you Pomykal and Barrios' names first.
Yeah.
But I do think they'd give you Ziegler's name before they give you Hollingshead.
True. But yeah, to your point, I just don't think a lot of folks are talking about FC Dallas in general.
No, they're not.
Bartimus Prime has a player and a coach.
Okay.
Player, Ante Razov.
Oh, historically? Yeah, absolutely. And he's the one who fits into that, wrong place, wrong time, because Razov was a player who scored goals in MLS, ton of goals, but never really got his due at the national team level. I'm trying to check how many caps he had with the national team. It wasn't as many as he should have had, but he was also during that Brian McBride era, and even a little bit at the beginning of Razov's career.
25.
Yeah, crossing over with Eric Winalda and that group, and then McBride. It didn't work as much as it should have. He had 42 goals with the Chicago Fire. That's probably where a lot of people know him from his first run there. Then he came back and scored another 34. He spent a little bit of time in Spain in 2000 and 2001 and actually scored 7 goals. But his time with Chicago is what most people will remember. He then finished with Chivas USA and had 4 years and scored 30 goals in that 4-year span, 114 goals as a professional. Razov is a guy that gets lost in the conversation of great goal scorers for the United States, and it's mainly just because he didn't get a ton of time with the national team. But at the domestic level, at the club level, he was lethal.
Coach for Bart is current Jim Curtin.
Yeah, I think Curtin has made that step up, and this is the year for me that you have to start considering Curtin in those conversations among the best in the league. And what he did on Saturday against Atlanta United, he knew that, one, Atlanta's going to be tired, and it's going to be a matter of time before that shows. He knew that he had Ilsinho in the bag. He knew that he could do things to accelerate Atlanta getting tired. And he did. And he also knew that he could get what he needed out of the midfield with Jamiro Montero filling the role left by Alejandro Bedoya's suspension. And it all worked. And it all worked really well. Very well organized. I was impressed with the way they played, the way they pressed. It wasn't out of control. It wasn't reckless. It was very organized, and it was by design to just wear Atlanta out over time. And it did. Curtin, we'll see how he finishes up, because he's got some big tests coming up. He's got LAFC. He's got NYCFC. He's got some big games over the stretch, but I thought it was unfair that he only got the 1-year contract coming in, and they've quickly rectified that. But Jim Curtin should be in Philadelphia for a long time, and if they don't appreciate him in that regard, then the Union would be making a big mistake.
Jim Lepp. Historically, Eddie Pope is still my favorite center back. Never chose to pursue Europe, which likely is part of the reason he's less heralded. It just struck me how much Miles reminds me of his game.
Yeah, I totally agree with the Miles Robinson comparison. I think Miles will end up being better on the ball. Pope was just classy because he was so quick. You never saw him have to make a desperate lunging tackle. He read the game really well. He's another one that, in terms of the domestic conversation, I don't think Eddie Pope gets left out. I think he does get a lot of respect in the U.S. soccer conversation. I think for some, because he didn't play in Europe, they discount him a little more than they should. But I think most have him as one of your best ever center backs for the U.S. national team. And look, it's hard to go, really further back than 1990, honestly, because you just didn't have much of a high level to compare. You also didn't have much access to the teams in the 80s, but and before that. So, like, I can't compare Eddie Pope to one of the center backs from the 1950 World Cup, for example, or the 1930 World Cup. There's just no basis for comparison. But in the modern era, I think you're talking about Eddie Pope. I think you're talking about Carlos Bocanegra.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two who jump out. I think Marcelo Balboa is part of the conversation. I would put a John Doyle in that conversation as well. He was in the earlier stage of it, 1990 World Cup. Eddie has to be in that mix. And if you're leaving him out, I think you're flat out wrong. So he doesn't get enough respect internationally because of his career, because he didn't play in Europe. And there were definitely some at the time who said, well, he should have went to test himself. But Eddie Pope delivered, I think, consistently for club and for country.
We have a couple of folks. Tafka, off topic of overrated, underrated, was marveling at the $90,000 that was raised yesterday for the golf tournament and could not have been happier about seeing that a number that large. And also wanted to know where the next Soccer at the Station was planned for. Any ideas?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you look at the MARTA Station map, and I think all of them are on the list at some point. I think East Lake, I know, was high up the list. I don't know if that's the next one after East Point gets done. East Point's under construction right now. I don't know if East Lake is next. I think Dorville, Chambly are definitely high on the list. Maybe one of those very soon would make a lot of sense. I think you could also see another one on the west side because the West End station has had such success. I think you could see one on that west line, depending on just where the space is and the cost, because those are the things that can be the challenge when you're building something like this is this space ready? Is it flat? Is it like, if it's a parking lot and it's a flat parking lot, it's a lot easier to do one of these quickly than if you've got to grade it, if you've got to, tear stuff down, if you've got to move a bunch of stuff. Like, that's when costs go up and that's when time goes up. So I don't have the lay of the land across all the different stations, but a lot of the MARTA stations have parking lots that are not being used and parking lots that have not been used for a decade plus.
Yeah.
And those are going to be the ones that I think are the quick ones. East Lake would be, I think, a pretty successful one, especially on the adult side of it. And I think, when you get those adult leagues going and money can come in, that funds programs for kids. I think one on the west side could be really transformational if there's a station that would be the right fit. So we'll see, and that stuff will start to be talked about more and more as the year goes on. But East Point is next, and I think East Lake is going to be after that. But East Point should open pretty soon. I think the turf was just laid down on it in the last week or so. So that'll be the next one. We'll keep you posted with all of that and anything else going on in the soccer in the streets world. But up next, Mike Conti from 92.9 The Game joins us. We'll see how his voice is sounding. He was hurting in Philadelphia. He was hurting a little bit. He's gotten a little bit of rest, so hopefully he's feeling a little bit better. We'll check in with Mike right after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky and Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Welcome back. Hour number 2, Soccer Down Here, September 4th edition. It's a while past Wednesday, so keep sending in your answers to our question for you. Most underrated player in MLS. If you want to go current, if you want to go history, either one's fine. Let's ask that question right now to our guest, Mike Conti. How are you feeling, Mike, first up?
Thanks for asking. Better. I'd say probably about 90%. If I was 50% on Saturday, was 60 on Sunday, 70 on Monday, 80 yesterday. So hopefully that means by tomorrow, after a week and a half of dealing with whatever the hell this was, I'll be 100%. I'm hoping.
Trending in the right direction. That's always a good thing.
Trending up. Good thing.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So the question on the table, most underrated player in MLS. Who comes to mind?
Carlos Heel. Carlos Heel. I
Heel?
don't know why. I don't know why he doesn't get talked about more often. And when I say underrated, it's kind of in the same boat as most valuable player for me, where if you take Heel off of New England, where are they? If you take Vela off LAFC, where are they? Maybe that's not the right way of running a most underappreciated player poll or underrated, but I don't know why Carlos Heel doesn't make more teams of the week. I don't know why he wasn't an all-star consideration. A lot of things about that don't really make sense to me. I think he has been very, very important for New England, and one of the big reasons, along with Bruce Arena, why they are where they are right now, where I think they're going to be a playoff team.
I mean, we had a bunch of folks that came in the first hour and were mentioning coaches. And toward the end of hour number 1, Jim Curtin was mentioned as underrated when it comes to coaches.
Jim Curtin won Philadelphia that game on Saturday. And look, Atlanta United was gassed, and that obviously was a big, big factor. But Jim Curtin showed a master class in how to manage substitutions on Saturday night, letting Frank de Boer play each of his cards and then making an immediate response. And look, it's a luxury to be able to bring on Sergio Santos and Ilsinho and have them run at tired players. But I thought Jim Curtin just did a masterful job at managing the game and managing his personnel on Saturday. And his substitutes were big, big factors in the go-ahead and the clinching goal. Santos scored the clinching goal and had an assist in the go-ahead goal. And then I think from a development standpoint, too, I mean, you look at the way that guys like Brandon Aronson have developed under Jim Curtin's tutelage. It has been a great year for Mark McKenzie compared to, I think, what we all expected from him, but he's still a very solid pro. He's someone that Curtin has really tutored and nurtured, and I think he's done a terrific job in Philadelphia, no matter how this ends for them. And I don't know if they're going to win the MLS Cup. They look good. I don't think they're the best team in the East, but I definitely think they're in that group of the 3 best teams, and they certainly proved it on Saturday. Curtin's the reason why they're there right now. And I think it's a testament to the ownership in Philadelphia showing patience with him and not canning him when they had the opportunity to do so last year.
Tom Bogert wrote a piece over at MLSsoccer.com, and he broke down his reasons why Philadelphia can win MLS Cup. I think they're in the conversation. I think they proved that on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to learn a lot about them next weekend when they host LAFC. And it's a shame because they don't really need to validate themselves. I mean, they have a whole slew of results. When you look at them, you think, wow, I mean, Philadelphia has certainly validated the reason that they're first in the East right now. Are they good enough to beat LAFC? I don't know that yet. We'll find out on Saturday. And they have them at home, too. Next Saturday. And they have them at home. So it would be teed up for them to get something positive against them. We'll see. I still think New York City is the team to beat in the Eastern Conference right now. And I know Atlanta United beat them relatively recently, but you guys know as well as I, if New York City's playing home games in the playoffs, that's a huge, huge advantage for them, especially in knockout play. It's going to be very, very tough for Philadelphia or Atlanta or someone else in this pack that we aren't really considering to go into Yankee Stadium and beat New York City. And if LAFC falters, do you have faith that Portland or LA Galaxy or Seattle or RSL can go into Yankee Stadium and win an MLS Cup final? I don't think so. So I think New York City's in the driver's seat right now. I really, really do. That can change, and Atlanta United can have a role in changing that. But to me, I don't know if I believe in Philadelphia as much as I believe in New York City right now.
I think NYC might have the emergency brake being pulled, though, with the injury to Eber. And that's going to be the question. If they miss him for an extended period of time right now, getting that top seed might not happen. And I'm with you. I think top seed for them gives them a huge leg up in the postseason with the new format. But I don't know if they can get it if Eber's out for any period of time.
Yeah, and it seems unclear. Like, I've been following Glenn Crooks on Twitter, and he's done some good reporting on the Eber injury, but it seems unclear as to whether or not this is a minor issue or if this is something substantial. New York City, I think, has 2 matches over the international break, don't they?
Yeah, I think at a minimum it's not a minor issue. I don't think it's minor. I think if it was minor, they would have said so. Unless they're playing
seen
games,
up to a month in some places,
which they could. Yeah, I mean, it's a hamstring, so it's tricky. They host New England on Saturday. They host Toronto next Wednesday, and they will be keeping Maxime Chanot for the Saturday match. He is delaying his departure, so I guess he's going to play in the midweek game next week for Luxembourg. He's not going to play over the weekend, so they'll have him. That helps, but no update yet on Eber.
Yeah, it's intriguing. If the Eber injury is not long-term, I think New York City, because all these matches are at home, including the match against Atlanta United, and this is not a slight on Atlanta United at all. I don't want people to think I'm Bobby Warshawing this segment or anything. I'm not doing that at all. I'm just saying, realistically right now, New York City, because they have so many matches at home down the stretch, including the one against Atlanta, they're in the driver's seat. Frank DeBoer even said they're in the pole position right now. That doesn't mean that Philadelphia cannot go to the Eastern Conference Final. That doesn't mean that Philadelphia can't win the Eastern Conference Final. But I don't like my chances if I've got to play at Yankee Stadium in the playoffs. And right now, New York City is in full control. They went out. They're hosting everything at Yankee Stadium, and they get that critical first-round bye, which I don't think a lot of people really realize this. In the new playoff format, if you have the bye, all you have to do is win 2 home games, and you're in the MLS Cup final. That's all you have to do. Getting that bye is almost more critical than having home field, to be totally honest with you. So, yeah, we'll see where the injury goes with Eber, Jason. I mean, I agree. That would be a huge blow to them. I don't think it'd be a devastating blow, but I think it'd be a huge blow. And then it would make this run down the stretch in the East more complicated. Even though Atlanta United lost to Philadelphia on Saturday, Atlanta United still has that game in hand and still has the wins tiebreaker potentially on Philadelphia if Atlanta United can win out. So I'm not as worried about Philadelphia as I am about New York City in the overall Eastern Conference race when it comes to Atlanta.
Mike, what do you think about action during an international break. I mean, you mentioned NYCFC's got a couple of matches here in the international break. It's not really a true international break when you got, I think, you got 8 teams playing this weekend.
Right.
So what do you think about stuff like this?
I mean, John, obviously I don't like it, but I don't know if it can be avoided. And these are the issues you run into when you have MLS teams that are sharing buildings with someone else and they don't have scheduling priority. I mean, New York City has to play these games during the international break because Yankee Stadium was unavailable to them otherwise earlier in the year. This is the problem that this league is going to continue to be in as long as they're continuing to play matches at Yankee Stadium and in Foxborough and in CenturyLink Park or whatever it's called up in Seattle, where teams are sharing buildings. There's really no way around it otherwise. Obviously not ideal. The September international window is a little bit more interesting because you're not really in a World Cup qualifier window. I guess clubs could flex their muscle a little bit and, try to influence players to resist call-ups.
Actually,
if it really
it's
were
not that simple this time, though, because this year the September window normally is a qualifying window. This year being the year after a World Cup, it's not. But you have CONCACAF Nations League that you can't turn down because it's an official competition. You have UEFA qualifiers, which you can't turn down, and that's why it's impressive that NYC is able to keep Chanot, because Luxembourg could say, well, no, he's coming because we're calling him up. That's where that relationship building comes into it, where, hey, you've got to find that balance. For the U.S. right now, that's why Toronto's able to keep these guys. But then the flip side is you look at what Seattle's about to deal with. Now, this was a rescheduled game. That's something that has been lost in the conversation. This was the game that I think the snow in Denver earlier this year has forced it to be rescheduled into this window. Seattle's going to be missing 10 players. Who knows who's going to be on the field for Seattle this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously that's a huge issue. But as long as you're going to be a February to November league, you're going to run into these problems. It is what it is, John, I guess. I don't like it, but I don't know how you avoid it unless you get on the same calendar as every other major league in the world. And I was thinking about this today. I mean, I know a lot of fans out there would like to see MLS be an August to May league, just like, the major leagues in Europe and other parts of the world. And I get that. I actually think MLS kind of benefits from an international standpoint by having fixtures in June, July, and August when Europe is kind of quiet. Because from a television standpoint, you're getting audiences in Europe paying attention to MLS because it's the only thing on TV. It's like that Hawaii-Wyoming game that comes on at 11:30 at night on a Saturday, and it's the only game on. You're going to watch it because you want to watch college football, and there's nothing else to watch.
And you want to make up for everything that happened earlier in the day, too.
100%, yeah. So I think in a way MLS benefits in more ways than some perceive by playing on this calendar. One of the drawbacks, of course, John, is that you're going to have this overlap with international windows, and it's not ideal. That's a huge problem for Seattle, and that's tough. Going to Colorado, the Rapids are playing a little bit better right now, and Seattle obviously is playing for seed in the West. That's a huge handicap for them. But like you said, Jason, it is a rescheduled match. I don't think anyone was expecting 2 feet of snow in Colorado. Wasn't that like an April or May snowstorm that did that? Yeah, I mean, I don't know what you can do other than curse out Mother Nature for it, because that's a number of unforeseen circumstances kind of aligning to give you what you have now.
See, I'll disagree a little bit in that I think the league can do a better job of avoiding these international windows, even on the calendar they're on. I don't think moving the calendar fixes that necessarily, because you see some leagues that do play through windows. MLS does it more than anybody else, and this season it's trickier than it's ever been before because you compressed your playing schedule by a month. And you started at the same time you normally had been, but you're ending a month earlier. So you don't have as many weeks to play with. So this year, I think it's unavoidable. But in the future, you've got to, if you're going to play midweek games, play more midweek games and don't play in these international windows where teams are going to be shorthanded. It affects the competition. I mean, you can't predict injuries for sure. But when you get a situation like we've seen with Toronto, for example, where because of the relationship that Greg Berhalter and Greg Vanney have, he didn't call in Bradley, Altidore, Omar Gonzalez. Toronto could have been playing shorthanded this weekend against Cincinnati. They could have been playing shorthanded next Wednesday against NYC, but they're not. And that's going to have an impact because other teams are in this same window. That's where it just gets... I don't like the effect it has on the competition, and I think going forward, the league just has to bite the bullet and schedule more midweek games to avoid this. And that won't hurt the Atlanta, Seattle's, New England's who are playing in NFL venues. They can work that out. It's going to be a problem for Yankee Stadium, and honestly, for me, at this stage of where NYC is, it's a problem that they have to figure out. The league shouldn't avoid these international windows because NYC hasn't been able to get any progress on a stadium.
Yeah. I would also just say that if the U.S. men's national team were playing a World Cup qualifier or a Gold Cup match or anything other than a friendly this weekend, Greg Berhalter probably does not do the favor that he did to Toronto.
He doesn't. Let's be really clear in what could have happened. If the CONCACAF Nations League schedule had fallen in a different way, if the U.S. was playing Canada and Cuba this window as opposed to the October window or the November window, then no, those guys would be gone, and Toronto would be playing shorthanded at Yankee Stadium next week in a huge Eastern Conference game. But the way it fell, Canada and Cuba play each other in this window because they're in the same group. The U.S. doesn't play those CONCACAF Nations League games until the October and November windows. So Toronto gets that benefit and gets to keep these guys.
Right. Yeah. Well, you're right. They've got to figure it out. But I also respect the fact that it's complicated and that there's no magic bullet because
to this point of the season, yeah.
It's I think where it's most complicated is this window's complicated. It's that summer because you're going to have a competition that is not a typical, week to avoid in your schedule like the European leagues are avoiding right now. You're talking about a competition that's going to take 3 weeks to a month, and it's hard to shut down for that period of time. That's where MLS will have a difficulty, and if they can't avoid that completely, all right, I can take that trade-off. But these windows, they can avoid, and they have to schedule better to do it.
Yeah, too much on the line with the competitive balance of the league at stake going into the playoffs. I'm totally with you.
Yeah, this window they have to avoid. If they have to pick priorities on windows to avoid, this one in the new schedule format, this is the last one. You've got playoff games. They have to avoid this because it has too much of an effect.
To this point of the schedule, Mike, when you look back to the season on the whole, and this can be an Atlanta United specific answer, could be an MLS broad answer. What have been some of the things that have been most surprising to you about this season on the whole with you and Jason in the booth? What have been some of the things that have surprised you the most about this season?
Oh, boy. Well, let's go back to Philadelphia. I am surprised they are this good. I thought Philadelphia would be a borderline playoff team. I thought their season would hinge on Trusty and McKenzie getting a little bit more experience. Now, Trusty's not really even in their team. McKenzie's had an okay year. But it's just been a really, really smart, savvy job by Ernst Tanner and Jim Curtin. And they built a competitive team that no one is going to want to play up in Chester. That's a surprise to me. They've exceeded my expectations. On the negative side, Boy, oh boy. I thought Columbus would be a little bit better under Caleb Porter. I'm surprised to see them struggling to the degree that they have struggled. San Jose, I think the way that they're kind of petering out a little bit has been surprising to me. I know they did get a win over the weekend, but really now it was against Orlando. I'm a little surprised that they haven't been able to sustain it a little bit better. We will see, though. I mean, San Jose is going to have some prove-it matches coming up because they've got a couple East Coast trips that are not going to be easy, so that they could totally kind of tip that on its ear. I mean, obviously, I don't think anyone expected LAFC to be on a 80-point pace. I mean, that's just what they're doing this year is off the chart good. I think we expected them to be good, but not to this degree. Other than that, I look at the league right now, and I can't say I'm really all that surprised with anything that's kind of unfolded this year, at least if you look through the prism of how last season ended. I thought RSL ended the season on a pretty good note last year. They've been good this year. Seattle, same thing. Portland, I think we knew when they started getting all those home matches, they would be better. They have been better. DC is right about where I expected them to be, as Rooney kind of wraps it up there. Montreal has kind of been a little bit underperforming to me. Maybe the managerial change will help things. Certainly they did not take a positive step on Saturday. So we'll see. But honestly, John, I'm not really overly surprised with a whole lot this year, other than the extremes. The extreme of what LAFC is doing has surprised me. The extreme of Philadelphia being, not near the top of the East, but at the top of the East, that has surprised me a little bit. Other than that, I don't know. Maybe I should have gone to Las Vegas before the season began.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah, it unlock. I like it. Question for you: U.S.-Mexico Friday. It's normally a huge game, whether it's a friendly qualifier, competitive, exhibition, whatever. How does this one rate for you? Because to me, and maybe it's just the way the U.S. men's national team kind of is in the soccer conversation at the moment, it feels like a very muted build-up for it.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason is because of where MLS is in its season right now, where you're exactly a month away from the season being over and going into the playoffs. It does fall at a really weird time this time around. And plus, you just played them in a Gold Cup final. I mean, it's not like it's been 6 months since you played Mexico. It's been 8 weeks. So, I mean, I'll be curious to see who Tata selects on Friday night, if this is going to be a full, first choice Mexico against a full first choice USA. We already know it's not really going to be a full first choice USA. On a micro level, I would be really curious to see if Miles Robinson gets an opportunity to play. That makes it intriguing to me. But this is one of a very, very rare number of USA-Mexico matches where I really don't feel like I need to go out of my way to find a TV at 8:30 Friday night. It's weird because I think what's got my attention right now is what's happening in MLS and going into this stretch run. So, I mean, of course I will watch because I want to see if Miles Robinson and potentially, I doubt it, but maybe Brad Guzan gets an opportunity to play. But outside of that, it's a friendly. Doesn't really mean anything. It's not going to have any kind of impact on World Cup qualifying or any other competitions. It's weird. It's kind of a weird place to stick it on the schedule, especially considering that you just played at Soldier Field a month and a half ago.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about it on Friday, but it's been surprising to me in that it's there. It's going to happen on Friday night, and generally it's all consuming in the U.S. soccer conversation, and now it feels like, I think you're right. I think MLS has grown to a point that the conversation around the playoff race, the conversation around the year LAFC's having, who the second best team is, all those kinds of things are grabbing people's attention more than a U.S.-Mexico game that a few years ago, that's all we'd be talking about right now.
Now, let me also interject that if Mexico goes out and wins 3-0, it's not going to stop me from going on Twitter and complaining. because that's what I like to do with the U.S. men's national team. But
if the U.S. wins 3-0, what will the reaction be? I don't think it will really be much of a reaction.
No, I don't think so either. But again, I mean, if you want MLS to grow into a league that's going to be taken seriously and have a lot of credibility in North America, then actually this is kind of a good conversation to have. Mm-hmm. I mean, who would have thought even 5 years ago we would be saying, who cares about USA-Mexico? Because the MLS playoff race is getting really, really hot. That's a good thing. I mean, I think that tells you a lot about where we are as a league right now in MLS. That's excellent. That's a really, really good thing. If this were a World Cup qualifier, if this were a Gold Cup match, a Nations League match, whatever, it'd be a totally different conversation. I really strongly feel that way. The fact that it's a friendly so soon after you just played them in a Gold Cup final just feels very weird and out of place to me.
I agree. We'll talk more about the build-up to U.S.-Mexico and anything else that happens around U.S. soccer with you again on Friday. But get some rest, man.
Yeah, I'm
talk
working
Penn State, Idaho.
No, we're not.
I didn't really
Penn
get
State,
to see
Idaho.
any of it. I didn't get to see any of it, but I heard about it. And hey, great job, Georgia State. By the way, I thought it was really cool. And I don't know if the Philadelphia people meant to do this or knew what they were doing. They have the Georgia State Tennessee game on all the monitors on the Jumbotron on Saturday before the teams came out for warm-ups, which is really, really cool. And I think just totally coincidental, but it was fun to be able to watch that.
Cool. We'll get some rest, and we'll check in with you on Friday.
Okay, and don't forget, stoppage time, 2 p.m. today on the 92.9 The Game Facebook page.
Yes, get your questions in starting now. Tweet them at Jimmy. He'll have them.
See you guys.
See you, Mike.
You good.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll get to more of your questions this morning on a Wall Pass Wednesday right after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm going to let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, September 4th, Wall Pass Wednesday. You guys have passes you're going to send our way. We'll see if we can hit the 1-2 like Joseph Martinez and Darlington Nagby. What you got?
Will Dickerson, on our underrated player discussion, mentions Nacho Piatti.
Love it. I think he gets a lot of praise. He does. He's one of my favorites in the league, though. I don't know if it's possible for him to get enough praise because of what he's brought to the table since he came to the league. And this is a guy you got to go back and remember was on that San Lorenzo team that won the Copa Libertadores. He was teammates with Tito Villalba during that time, and when he made the move to Montreal in 2014, he scored 64 goals in 127 matches. I think that's coming into the year. Piatti is one of the best technical players in the league. And I think what stands out to me about him, 66 and 132 now, including this year. He's had injuries this year. Yeah, I mean, that's really good. He's had injuries this year that have slowed him down a bit. He's only played 8 times, 3 goals in those 8 matches, 6 starts. But 2016, 17 goals. 2017, 17 goals. 2018, 16 goals. 2018, he had 13 assists to go with 16 goals, by the way, for a Montreal team that wasn't that great. Nacho is a guy who is not going to blow you away with speed. He is going to blow you away with skill and technique. And that's what he brings to the table. And that's what he's been so good at in his time in Montreal. He will go down as one of the legends of the league, no doubt. I think he should. And I hope that he doesn't get kind of lost in the shuffle because he hasn't been on a team that's won an MLS Cup, for example. But Nacho Piatti's been one of the biggest players of the last 5 years in the league. I think John might be looking up more Nacho Piatti information, or he fell asleep.
Oh, no, he hit the wrong button as he was trying to do things. Jorge B. with a soccer over there question.
Yes.
Predictions for Colombia, Brazil on Friday. Colombia is playing without Falcao and James due to injury.
That makes it difficult for Colombia. I think you have to factor that in when you're looking at this. And this is a game that's going to get some attention. We talked about U.S.-Mexico. This is a game in Miami that's going to get some big attention and maybe steal some of the attention that U.S.-Mexico would ordinarily get. It's also a big test, I think, for what Inter Miami can be. You know, this is going to be at the Hard Rock Stadium. What kind of crowd is this going to draw? That's one question I have about it. I think you're going to see a good match. I think you're going to see a very fun match. I think the atmosphere will be great. But with Colombia missing Falcao, missing James, that'll hurt them. I wonder, though, if this is going to be potentially an audition for a big Colombian player to come to Inter Miami. Because I've felt like that's the country, if I'm Inter Miami and I'm trying to identify, all right, in a perfect world, if I can get a big-name player from country X, that would put us over the top. That would get a ton of attention. That would activate the community. I feel like Colombia would be a great one for Miami to pick from. That's why I said James to Miami a long time ago. It's not going to happen now. Falcao, I think the injuries for him and the amount of money it would take, it's probably not the best purchase. But is there a player in this Colombia team that you could be looking at? Well, they're going to be in your city, so you'll have a chance to try to get a meeting together. I'll be fascinated about that, what kind of stuff comes out of it. I want to see what the crowd looks like. On the Brazilian side, I'm not super up to date on what Brazilian squad we're going to see, and we'll get you set for it on Friday. Friday will be kind of a weekend preview where we look a little deeper at U.S.-Mexico. We look a little deeper at Brazil-Colombia and some of the other matches that are happening Friday and over the weekend. There's some intriguing ones. I mean, there's some very interesting ones that are going to be happening in this window. Some are friendlies, some are official fixtures, but we'll dig deeper into that on Friday. That's a good question from Jorge B, and we'll try to give you a little more info as we get ready for it on Friday.
And along those lines, usually what we do on Friday is check in with the juice box purveyors, and I'm fairly certain that we'll have that information as well.
Well, you're in charge of it, so I mean, are we going to have that information?
Well, I hope that there are certain individuals who will be wanting to have that kind of action.
Well, you know that there are.
If the action exists, we will discuss.
Yes, trust me. The action exists. You could have found numbers on Burundi and Tanzania. Okay.
Is it still scoreless? It was scoreless at the half, and the National Police had to be involved.
Yeah, halftime got a little funky. Just coaches yelling and making fools of themselves. Yeah, it's scoreless in the 70s.
Fans were trying to get past the barricades and go after the officials, and so
it happens.
Crazy.
Nothing happened. It tried to happen, but it didn't.
Yes. Vine City, old topic, but the disgrace of the NYCFC stadium situation needs to be a constant discussion.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've said it many times. I understand why NYC came into the league. I think it was something that was needed in 2013-14 going into their launch in 15. I think it probably helped with the last TV contract. I think on the field they've been a good team. They've brought talent to this league. They brought Patrick Vieira to this league. They've been good for the league outside of this stadium issue. And now, look, the excuses are gone for me. I know how difficult it is to find land and build a stadium in New York City proper. That's why the Red Bulls didn't try. That's why they went to Jersey. But New York City FC has positioned themselves as the team of the city. So they can't really do that. It would completely change their brand. And they've got to figure this out. And that's why when we were talking about scheduling before, no, I don't think the league should bend over backwards to make it easier for NYC to avoid Yankees games. I would basically tell them, like, look, you're not playing during this international window. I don't care how the Yankee schedule works out. I don't care if you have to either find another place to play like you have before, if you got to go over to play at Citi Field because the Mets are off or the Mets are on the road, or if you got to go to Connecticut.
Rensselaer?
I don't care. Yeah. It's at a point now where, look, we're making the schedule format for the majority of the league, and we're making what's best for the competition, and you got a game scheduled. Deal with it. That's where I'm at with it at this point, and that would put more pressure on them, I think. It's not a great soccer experience. It's not. I mean, it's kind of cool to go to Yankee Stadium. I'd never been to Yankee Stadium. It's kind of cool to be in Yankee Stadium. It's not the original Yankee Stadium, but it's still Yankee Stadium. There's a cachet there. All right, that's cool. That's gone now. It's just a bad field, and that's my biggest issue this year is the problems we've seen with the actual field, and this is the stuff going over the infield. I don't remember those being as big of a deal in the past. They've been more of an issue this year than they've been in the past. That's unacceptable. It should be getting better, not worse.
Yeah.
And that's my biggest issue with it now is that, look, it was already bad, and somehow you've made it worse. Can't happen.
What was the match that happened recently?
Take your pick.
Where
that doesn't matter. Like, there's been 4 or 5. Like
that 18-inch divot that got pulled out that made the rounds.
That's what I'm saying. It's not a one-time thing. Like, it's not that it happened in one match and, oh, my God. It's happened 4 or 5 times this year. Yeah. Where it wasn't happening before. So it's past the, oh, wow, that was crazy. This is happening on a regular basis. This is a problem. Fix it. And that's where you're at now. But league format, don't bend over anymore for Yankee Stadium. You've got to deal with it, and they've got to deal with it. Schedule the games as the games should be scheduled, and if they can't get a home date, then, well, they got to go find one. And if it becomes NYC on tour playing all over the tri-state area, well, then have at it. Now, reportedly, they're expecting to have an update on a stadium before the end of the year. I'm sensitive to the fact that, yes, it's difficult. I understand it. It's not easy. Sure. Business transactions, especially of the scale, it's not easy to accomplish in the 5 boroughs. Okay, that's fine. But you knew that when you were coming in. You are now, 5-6 years into your history as a club, even before you got on the field. And there's nothing in place. That is a massive problem. If it had been 2-3 years, okay, and then you get an announcement, and then you know that, well, you're going to have something in 3 years. You're going to have something in 2 years. Okay, cool. Right now, don't even know where it would be. Don't even know what the timeline is. Don't know anything about what would happen next. And that's just unacceptable at this stage of where the league is and where this club should be. So, no, for me, the league should just not give them any more leeway, and you give them a home date, and they got to figure out how to fill it.
Lion City again. It seems like super draft players have been underrated for a while, but this year we are hearing more success stories. Love to see some reporting if it's a trend or random.
It's kind of an awkward question because the super draft is becoming less of an impact. It just is. Let's look at the 2019 super draft, for example, and see who is contributing out of it. Frankie Amaya for Cincinnati hasn't played a whole lot. Siad Haji for San Jose was the number 2 pick. Haven't seen him. Santiago Patino for Orlando City was number 3. Barely seen him. I'm scrolling through, and your namesake, John Nelson, has played a fair bit for Dallas.
Yes.
Tajon Buchanan for New England, played a little bit. Shinya Shiki for Colorado has played and scored goals.
Yep.
Chase Gasper for Minnesota at number 15 has played and done some things. Akeem Ward, number 14 for D.C., was let go, and he's in Birmingham now. J.J. Williams for Columbus has spent most of the time on loan with Birmingham and scored goals there. Anderson Sayadu at 24 was let go.
Where's
Sean Nealis? What? Go ahead.
I was going to say, where's Sayadu? He's in Birmingham.
Yeah, but that's not the issue. It's the fact that you've got 2 players in the first round that have been let go.
Yeah,
in September. I missed one. Oh, DeJuan Jones from New England. He's played this season. Sean Nealis in the second round has played and been a pleasant surprise for the Red Bulls. Kamal Miller in the second round for Orlando City has been a nice surprise for them. Hassani Dotson in the second round. It's funny that the second round has been a thing. Reese Buckmaster did a second division contract and then moved up to the first team midway through. Those are all early second round picks. That's been the bigger surprise than anything. A lot of third round picks were passed on. So, it's just the super draft. I think as a whole, the super draft is not underrated because the production just has not been there from super draft players. As a whole, have there been some gems out of the super draft in recent years? Yeah, there have been, for sure. And we've talked about the 2017 draft being one of the stronger ones in recent years. But 2018, Chris Mueller was the number 6 pick. I think Chris Mueller's an excellent player for Orlando City. Mason Toy, number 7 pick. Excellent. Brandon Bye for New England. I think he's going to end up being a long-time pro in Major League Soccer. He was number 8. Mo Adams could be one of those guys at number 10. Brian White at number 16 for the Red Bulls. But it's a handful each time. So what happens down the road is the question in the super draft. What happens in the long term? That's the question for the super draft. I think it goes to 2 rounds is where I'm thinking the next step is. I think it comes down to 2 rounds. and the rest of the guys are available as free agents to either go to an MLS camp or sign. They can just go straight to a USL Championship situation. But as a whole, I would say that the Super Draft is not underrated. I think some players are underrated because they're coming out of the college system, but it's a small number.
How many players were actually picked in the third round this past go-round?
13, 14.
So it's 50-50?
Roughly, yeah.
Participation, yeah. So, yeah. I mean, when you have that, I think that's your number one sign to trim things to 2 rounds and just let everybody else ply their wares as free agents after that point.
Yes.
Shiva is going to have to listen later, but she wanted to share with us that she made it to Bobby Warshaw's column. She doesn't think still that she can consider LAFC the best team in league history. Lots of respect for what they've done, and yes, they do have the best regular season record so far in league history, but for her it takes more to consider a team the best, in all caps, in league history.
They can be. They're not yet. They're not going to do the treble because they didn't get to the Open Cup, so I think Toronto's going to have a pretty severe argument with not being the best in league history because they did a treble. Yes, the Canadian Championship's different, but they still did it. Nobody else has. For me, LAFC can't be part of that conversation if they don't win MLS Cup. They just can't. And this is where I get frustrated with all of this, bluster from Bobby Warshaw. Because within the same week, you're getting contradictions. In his column, he said, I'm a member of the MLS Cup Matters More Than Supporters Shield Club. But he countered that a little bit in the column. He said, but I belong to the subcommittee, except when a team does something this phenomenal in the regular season. But then in tweets last week, in a conversation going back and forth, he said, I personally do not weigh playoff success into greatness that highly. Single elimination games and 2-leg ties are not great indicators. So I don't know what he's basing it on. If it's just the eye test, then just say it's the eye test. LAFC has been really good. And if you want to just base it on the eye test and say that they're the best team in league history, okay, cool. That's fine. Just say that. But I think you can't be the best team in MLS history if you don't win MLS Cup. I don't put Supporter Shield in that conversation with MLS Cup because it's not a balanced schedule. If it was, different conversation entirely. It's not. You can get fortunate travel. You can catch the top teams from the other conference at home instead of on the road. There's things about the scheduling that can fall your way and make your regular season numbers better. This league is judged on the champion being the one who comes through the playoffs. You can not like it, you can like it, whatever. That's how it is. I don't think you can go any other way. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
Burundi just gave up one of the worst goals I've ever seen.
Uh-oh. What happened?
By the way, I can't even. It'll
good, huh?
It'll be up there on Twitter.
That's a non-top 10?
Yeah, it's bad. They did get a goal a little bit ago, so now it's 1-1. It's absolute scenes and chaos, and I think the goalkeeper thought about walking off. It was so bad. It was just a really bad header back. The goalkeeper was coming out way too far, and the center back headed it back to where he thought the goalkeeper would be, and I don't know. It's
the goalkeeper,
chaos.
I'm guessing, was not there.
No,
at the
because he came out way
location.
too far. Yes.
So we're tied at ones. What minute?
They don't have it up on there right now. It's getting late. It's probably in the last 5 minutes or so.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, for me, please, Warshaw, Bobby, please tell us which one of you we need to pay heed to. Is it the column version or the Twitter version? It's like the HAL 9000 with him. Like you're getting one version and then something else with conflicting instructions. For me, I look at it like the Seattle Mariners. That is my example in all of this. The Seattle Mariners, when they had that big season when they were, 114-48, and then got bounced in the second round of the playoffs, didn't make it to a World Series, didn't win anything. Yeah, great. You had this fantastic regular season. You got bounced. That's what you're remembered for more than anything else. So for me, it's the end result and what you're able to do with it. Yeah, you could have 80 points. Yeah, you could have all these wins. Yeah, your goal difference is through the roof and reminiscent of Manchester City in years past. But, Supporters Shield, great. But if you don't win the title, what are you going to be remembered for? Honestly, you're going to be remembered not for doing something as opposed for doing something.
Yeah, and you become one of the best teams that didn't win a championship.
Yeah.
And you get into that conversation. The New England Patriots know that one. Their perfect regular season, and they didn't win Super Bowl. And they're not considered one of the best teams in NFL history. It's just how it goes.
So yeah.
I just want consistency out of this stuff, and that's just annoying, but that's what it is.
We're officially caught up on Twitter, sir. Would you like to go to our last break?
Yeah, let's take a break here, and we'll come back and wrap everything up on the other side. Hang out with us. We'll be right back.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
Welcome back. Wrapping up Soccer Down here for September 4th. Thanks, everybody, for sending in questions and comments throughout the show. Always fun to kind of chop different things up. We're going to get into some U.S. Women's National Team and NWSL stuff tomorrow as the celebration tour continues, but also a really good piece over at the Oregonian about kind of what's next when it comes to the NWSL, as U.S. Soccer will not be as involved going forward. I think they'll still be involved financially, but they've basically been a lot of the league office, and that's not going to continue in the long run. NWSL will require more as a league and require more from its owners, and kind of how is all of that going to look? And now we're a little bit further after the World Cup bump, and how sustainable is it, et cetera, et cetera. We'll get deeper into that tomorrow. We'll also talk about the coaching candidates and pros and cons of who's out there and where that conversation continues to go. It is a big day in the music world, John. It is Beyonce's birthday.
Huzzah!
What's your
How
favorite
old?
Beyonce song?
Oh God, it would. I mean, are we talking solo or are we talking
Yes.
group?
Well, you can include the group if you need to, but
Okay.
your call.
What's the song that they did where Stevie Nicks came in and they sampled her?
I'm trying to remember which song that was. I just love your reference there. It was Bootylicious.
That one. But it has to be with Stevie Nicks because having her in the video I thought was a nice touch, and having that sample. So
do you know any other of their songs?
Well, I know. Was it Put a Ring on It? And that's her solo, right?
Yes, Single Ladies. Yes,
Single Ladies. Thank you. So that would be 1 and 2. So I guess you could say that I'm right there with the most commercialized Destiny's Child / Beyonce songs out there.
No, you're not. You're not even the most commercialized, because Destiny's Child had many other big commercial songs. You just know that
Shows you how much
Stevie
I watch
Nicks was
MTV
involved.
now.
They're not played on MTV now because nobody is.
Yeah, because they do reality programming. You have to go to MTV2 to watch MTV.
They do a lot of reality programming too.
Do they have an MTV3?
You have to go to
YouTube.
You have to go to YouTube to watch videos these days.
True, pretty much.
Let's see. Which ones did you miss in my opinion?
All of them?
Well, yeah, but I will go Crazy in Love as her first solo single was still ridiculously good. That still holds up. Run the World, Girls is one of the best. Oh,
okay.
You know that one.
Yeah, I do. From Pitch Perfect.
Do you know any of her stuff like based just off of her?
Probably if you name
well,
it.
you got Put a Ring, you got Single Ladies, and there wasn't a 70s rock star involved in it, and there wasn't a Pitch Perfect movie involved in it. So I'll give you that one.
Okay. So what else? What other song?
Let's see. What are some of the others that hold up to me? You didn't get Irreplaceable.
No.
To the left.
Oh, that's okay. So that's the name of it.
The song's Irreplaceable. Yes.
Okay. Well, apparently so. If it's on your list that high,
it's a good. I mean, it's one of her biggest hits for sure.
But you said it was Irreplaceable, so I'll take your word for it.
No, that's the name of the song.
Okay. Good to know. I'll put that one away.
Yes. Love on Top might be, if we're going underrated, since that's the theme of the day, Love on Top would maybe be my most underrated Beyonce hit song.
Do I know the lyrics for that one?
No, you don't. You've probably never heard it. "38 years old, Beyonce, by the way. I think John was looking up Beyonce songs.
Yeah, trying to, but
yeah.
I think that. All right, so, any others?
I mean, she's had a pretty long career. She's got a lot of songs.
But Beyonce is not on my on an iPod, sir.
You still have an iPod?
Buried someplace, I'm sure I do.
How do you listen to music these days?
YouTube or satellite radio.
Okay.
But most of my time is spent listening to live sporting events or watching live sporting events. I really do not listen to a whole lot of music, and when I do, it's off of the boss's compilation that she has in the car.
The Destiny's Child songs that you forgot were
all of them.
Yeah, Bills. You remember that?
Might remember that one. Maybe.
Yeah, probably not. Say My Name.
Okay, that one I remember.
Okay, Jumpin'.
Is that with the apostrophe and no G?
Yes, it is.
Okay. No, don't remember that one.
Oh, that was a good one. The remix had Jermaine Dupri and Lil Bow Wow, and it was good stuff. Independent Women, Part 1, from Charlie's Angels. Maybe because it's a movie, you might remember it.
No, because if it was the original Charlie's Angels, I vaguely remember the movie, but not the soundtrack, and that means that the soundtrack didn't stick with me.
Yeah. Soldier with T.I. and Lil Wayne.
Is it Soulja or Soldier?
It's Soldier.
Okay, no.
Why do you have a problem with creative spelling?
No, I don't have a problem with creative spelling. I was just trying to clarify the spelling.
Okay. It is Lil Wayne, not Little.
Yes, Lil Wayne, like yeah. Lil Bow Wow and Lil Jon.
Just to be clear, yes. There you go.
Yes.
The underrated Destiny's Child song for the list would be "Lose My Breath" from 2004.
Nope.
That was a really cool song. I like it.
Okay. Nope. Never heard of it.
So Love on Top's my underrated. Beyonce solo single and Lose My Breath is my underrated Destiny's Child single on an underrated Wall Pass Wednesday. And it's Beyonce's birthday if you're catching this late and you're wondering why we're talking about Beyonce so much. So there you go. When you see, and this is for John especially, because when he sees Twitter and he sees what's trending and Bay Day is trending, now he knows why.
Okay. So what, I had about 4 songs that were...
No, you knew like 2, and you were reminded of about 2 or 3 others.
Okay, so 2 plus 2.
Yeah, you knew of 2, you didn't know what they were called.
Right.
And then, there were a couple others that you're like, that sounds familiar. So.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
About par.
Yeah, there you got some studying to do. There you go. But first, you got studying on... Yeah, you got a little bit. First, you got study on Birmingham Legion because we'll be calling that match tonight, 7:30 from the Fraction, as some people like to call it. No, I'm not doing the whole thing, though. 7:30, ESPN Plus. Come out and join us if you can. If not, watch. Should be a fun one. Bienveni Kana Kimano went 68 minutes for Burundi, 1-1 in the first leg. They have to go to Tanzania now in the second leg, and we'll keep you posted on if Benny Jets gets time in that one. But we'll be back tomorrow, SDH, 9 a.m. for a Thursday Thoughts edition of the show. We'll talk to you then. Mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha action at the Fraction, y'all.